June's shoulders ached from being tied to the metal chair for 3 straight days. The energy shackles around his wrists buzzed constantly, sending small jolts through his arms whenever he moved. The interrogation room was barely big enough for 2 people, with walls that seemed to close in on him every hour. The door slid open with a sharp hiss and Captain Vex walked in. The alien was almost 8 feet tall, with silver skin that looked like liquid metal. His forearms moved independently as he picked up data tablets and adjusted the room's lighting. 2 black eyes, each the size of a dinner plate, stared down at June with pure hatred. "Day 3, human," Vex said, his voice coming through a small device attached to his throat. The translator made his words sound robotic and cold. "Still nothing to say?" June rolled his neck, trying to work out the stiffness. His clothes were torn and dirty from the capture 3 days ago. He had been salvaging parts from an old cargo ship near the Void Nebula when their patrol found him. Just his luck. "Your kind disgusts me," Vex continued, walking around the chair in slow circles. "Look at you. Small, weak, covered in that disgusting hair. How did such pathetic creatures ever leave their planet?" "Maybe we're tougher than we look," June said quietly. Vex's mandibles clicked together rapidly, the alien version of laughter. "Tough? You cannot even break free from simple restraints. Your ships are held together with metal scraps. Your weapons are primitive projectile throwers." The alien leaned down until his face was inches from June's. His breath smelled like copper and rotting fruit. "Tell me where Earth is located and I will make your death quick. Refuse and you will spend your final hours screaming." June looked straight into those black eyes and spoke clearly. "Go to hell." The clicking sound got louder and angrier. Vex straightened up and slammed one of his 4 fists on the table. The babi metal dented under the impact. "3 days I have wasted on you," he snarled. 3 days of questions and you give me nothing. Do you think this is some game?" "I think you're getting frustrated," June replied. "That's good. Frustrated people make mistakes." Vex's silver skin darkened to a deep grey, a sign of rage in his species. He turned to the guard standing by the door, another Cytherian with blue markings on his arms. "Commander Zek, prepare the transport. We are done here." "Sir?" the guard asked. "Take this waste of flesh to the pit. Let the Sentinels have their fun with him. Maybe when the other humans hear his screams echoing through space, they will be more willing to talk." June felt his stomach drop. He had heard stories about the pit from other prisoners. It was where the Cytherians sent people they wanted to make examples of. No one ever came back from the pit. 2 more guards entered the room and unlocked his shackles. His arms fell to his sides, numb and useless. They grabbed him under his shoulders and lifted him to his feet. His legs nearly gave out. 3 days. Yao's sitting had left him weak and unsteady. As they dragged him toward the door, June caught Captain Vex watching him with satisfaction. "You will die slowly, human, and your screams will be broadcast across the galaxy as a warning to your species." June managed to lift his head and look back at the alien captain. Despite everything, despite the fear growing in his chest, he smiled. These creatures thought they knew what they were dealing with. They saw a human and assumed weakness. They looked at his size and decided he was helpless. But June had survived. The corporate wars back on Earth. He had crawled through burning cities and lived in the wasteland for months at a time. If they wanted to throw him in a pit with their monsters, let them try. They might be surprised by what happened next. The elevator platform shuddered and groaned as it carried June deeper into the planet's core. He counted the seconds in his head. 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes of steady descent. The air grew warmer and more humid with each passing moment. Strange sounds echoed up from below, like distant thunder mixed with the whisper of wind through caves. When the platform finally stopped, June found himself standing at the edge of something impossible. The cavern stretched out before him like an underground world. Crystal formations grew from floor to ceiling, some thin as needles, others thick as ancient trees. They glowed with their own inner light, blues, purples, greens, and golds that pulsed like heartbeats. The ceiling disappeared into darkness somewhere far above. June couldn't see the walls on either side. This wasn't just a cave. It was an entire ecosystem buried beneath the planet's surface. The guards shoved him forward roughly. His energy shackles clicked off automatically as he stumbled away from the platform. Behind him, The elevator began its journey back up, taking his only way out with it. "Welcome to your tomb, human," one of the guards called down as they disappeared into the darkness above. June rubbed his wrists where the shackles had been. The skin was raw and bleeding, but at least he could move his arms again. He took a few steps forward, his boots crunching on crystal fragments scattered across the ground. That's when he felt it, the sensation of being watched by something huge and intelligent. A sound like a mountain settling echoed through the cavern, then another, from a different direction, and a third, coming from somewhere behind him. June turned slowly as three shapes emerged from the crystal forest. His brain struggled to process what he was seeing. These weren't just large animals, they were creatures from Earth's oldest legends, made real and terrible. The first dragon was the color of molten gold, its scales catching and reflecting the crystal light until it seemed to glow from within. Each scale was the size of June's hand, overlapping like armor plating. When it breathed, waves of heat rolled off its body, making the air shimmer like a desert mirage. Its eyes were ancient and intelligent, holding wisdom that made June feel like a child. The second dragon moved like flowing water despite its massive size. Its scales were the deep blue of Arctic ice, and frost formed in the air around it with each breath. Where the golden dragon radiated heat, this one seemed to pull warmth from the air itself. Its movements were graceful and silent, like a predator that had perfected the art of hunting. The third dragon was the most unsettling. Its scales were so black they seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Looking at it was like staring into deep space. June's eyes couldn't quite focus on its edges. It moved through the shadows between the crystals, as if it belonged there, part of the darkness itself. High above, June could see the faint glow of observation windows. The Cytherians were watching, waiting for the show to begin. They probably had bets running on how long he would last. Every instinct screamed at June to run, to find cover, to do anything except stand there while three massive predators studied him. But he had nowhere to go. The elevator was gone, and these creatures could probably catch him in seconds if they wanted to. So instead, he did something that surprised even himself. He straightened his shoulders, looked directly at the golden dragon, and gave a small, respectful nod. "Honored ones," he said, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. The golden dragon's massive head tilted slightly, ancient eyes widening in what looked like surprise. In all its centuries of existence, no prey had ever addressed it with respect. The golden dragon's voice rumbled through the cavern like distant thunder, but there was something almost gentle in its tone. "I am Pyros," it said, each word carefully measured. "These are my companions, Frost and Shadow. In 300 years of imprisonment, you are the first creature to speak to us with respect instead of fear." June kept his hands visible and his posture relaxed, the way he'd been trained when dealing with dangerous situations. "I'm June, and something tells me you three didn't choose to be down here any more than I did." The three dragons looked at each other, and June caught something in their expressions, a shared understanding that spoke of years spent together in this place. Shadow, the black dragon, moved closer. As he did, the crystal light seemed to bend around him, creating ripples of darkness that made June's eyes water. "You see clearly, small one," Shadow said, his voice like whispers in an empty room. "We are prisoners just as you are now. The Cytherians keep us bound with crystal chains that feed off our own life energy. When they bring us prey, we must kill or slowly starve to death." Frost, the ice blue dragon, lifted her graceful head. When she spoke, her breath came out as visible mist. "The crystals that light this cavern are our prison and our lifeline. They store energy from our kills and feed it back to us in small portions. Just enough to keep us alive, never enough to break free." June walked closer to one of the larger crystal formations, running his hand along its smooth surface. It was warm to the touch and hummed with barely contained power. His mind, trained by years of military service and survival situations, began working through the problem. "How long have you been here?" he asked. "Time moves strangely in this place," Pyros replied, "but by our count, it has been nearly 3 centuries since we were captured during the Battle of the Seven Moons." 300 years, June repeated quietly. He looked up at the observation windows far above, where he could make out the shadowy forms of Cytherian watchers. And, in all, that time no one has tried to help you escape. Help? Frost laughed, but there was no humor in it. The creatures they send us are enemies of the Empire. Pirates, rebels, political prisoners. They come here to die, not to make friends with their executioners. Shadow moved closer, his massive form towering over June. Most scream and run when they see us. Others try to fight with weapons or their bare hands. All of them die the same way. But you, Pyro said, lowering his enormous head until he was at eye level with June, you showed us respect. You looked at us and saw people, not monsters. Why? June thought about his answer carefully. Back on Earth, we have stories about dragons. Some paint you as evil beasts, but the older tales, the ones my grandmother used to tell, they spoke of dragons as wise, ancient beings, creatures of honor, who were often misunderstood. He gestured to the crystal formations around them. Besides, anyone who's been imprisoned for 300 years and hasn't gone completely insane has to have incredible inner strength. That deserves respect. The dragons exchanged another look, this one longer and more meaningful. You speak of Earth stories, Shadow said. Tell me, do these tales ever speak of dragons and humans working together? A slow smile spread across June's face. As a matter of fact, they do. He pointed up at the observation windows. Those Cytherians up, they think they're about to watch another execution. What if we gave them something completely different instead? Pyros's ancient eyes began to glow brighter. You think there might be another way? I know there is, June said with growing confidence. But it's going to require trust, and it's going to require all four of us working together. Above them, the Cytherian observers shifted nervously. This conversation was lasting far longer than any previous encounter. Some began speaking rapidly into communication devices, while others leaned closer to their viewing screens. This was definitely not going according to their plan. The first night in the crystal cavern, June barely slept. Every shadow could hide. Danger. Every sound might signal an attack. But as the days passed, something strange happened. The three dragons didn't try to kill him. Instead, they watched him with curious eyes as he explored their prison, studying every crystal formation, every tunnel entrance, every crack in the walls. By the third day, June felt a familiar sensation stirring in his chest, something that had been buried since he left the military 5 years ago. It was the feeling of being a soldier again, of having a mission that mattered. Tell me about this place, he said to Pyros as he sat cross-legged near the golden dragon's massive form. How big is it? What's above us? How many guards? Pyros shifted his great bulk, crystals crunching under his weight. The cavern system extends for miles in every direction. There are 7 levels above us before you reach the surface. Each level has different security measures, energy barriers, automated weapons, guard stations. Guard rotations? June asked, his mind automatically filing away the information. They change shifts every 12 hours, Frost said, her icy breath, creating small snowflakes in the air. The night shift is smaller, only half the guards. They think we sleep when the cavern lights dim. Shadow's dark form rippled as he moved closer. There are ventilation shafts that connect to the upper levels, but they are too small for us to use. A human, however, June's eyes lit up. You've been planning an escape for 300 years, haven't you? Planning, yes, Pyros admitted. But never hoping. Until now. Over the following days, June felt pieces of his old self clicking back into place. The part of him that had led soldiers through enemy territory, that had survived behind enemy lines for weeks at a time. The part that had been trained to think like a predator. He found sharp crystal shards and began shaping them into tools and weapons, his hands remembering skills he thought he'd forgotten. He mapped out the cavern system in his mind, identifying choke points and escape routes. Most importantly, he started teaching the dragons things they had never considered. Your people never fought wars. He asked Frost one evening as he worked on sharpening a piece of red crystal into a knife-like edge. We had conflicts, yes, but they were civilized, she replied, watching his hands work with fascination. Honor duels. Formal challenges. Nothing. Like what you describe. Humans are different, June said, testing the sharpness of his improvised blade. We fight dirty when we have to. We use whatever advantages we can find. Size, strength, speed. Those don't always matter if you're smart enough. He looked up at the three massive creatures surrounding him. You've been thinking like prey for 300 years, but you're not prey. You're apex predators who've been caged. There's a difference. Explain, Shadow said, his voice like wind through empty corridors. June stood up and began pacing, energy coursing through him as ideas formed. The Cytherians control you through the crystals, right? They give you just enough energy to survive, but not enough to fight back. Classic prisoner control. Keep the inmates weak and dependent. Yes, Pyro said slowly, but they've made one critical mistake. They've kept you alive and conscious. That means you've had 3 centuries to study this place, to understand how it works, to plan. They think those crystals make you their slaves, but really they've given you the greatest weapon of all. Which is? Frost asked. Time, June said with a cold smile. Time to learn their weaknesses. Time to plan the perfect escape. Time to prepare for revenge. He picked up another crystal shard and began working it into a different shape. His movements were precise, economical. The movements of someone who had done this kind of preparation many times before. On Earth we have a saying, the most dangerous enemy is the one who has nothing left to lose and all the time in the world to plan their revenge. The dragons exchanged glances, and for the first time in centuries they felt something stirring. In their chests that wasn't hunger or despair, it was hope. But more than that, it was the awakening of something primal and fierce, the hunting instinct that had made them legends among their own kind. Above them, the Cytherian observers noted with growing unease that their entertainment had stopped, trying to escape, and had instead begun what looked suspiciously like military planning sessions. June crouched behind a cluster of tall crystals, motioning for the dragons to pay attention. He had arranged smaller crystal shards on the cavern floor to represent the prison's layout. Guardposts, corridors, and key structural points all marked out in his improvised battle map. Watch this, he said, moving around the crystal formation, with practiced stealth. In human warfare we call this a flanking maneuver, while the enemy focuses their attention on one threat. He gestured to where Pyros was positioned. Another attacker strikes from an unexpected angle. He demonstrated by having Shadow move silently through the crystal forest, while Frost created a distraction on the opposite side. The dragons followed his movements with growing interest, their ancient minds grasping the tactical concepts quickly. Your species developed these strategies naturally, Pyros asked, his golden eyes reflecting the crystal light as he studied. The mock battlefield. Had to, June replied, repositioning the crystal markers to show different scenarios. Humans aren't the biggest or strongest creatures on Earth. We couldn't outrun the fast predators or overpower the strong ones. So we got clever. We learned to work together, to use our brains instead of just brute force. He picked up a small crystal shard and held it next to a larger one. 1 human against a bear? The bear wins every time. But 5 humans with spears and a plan? Now the odds change completely. Frost moved closer, her massive form casting long shadows across the improvised war room. This persistence hunting you mentioned, explain this concept. June's eyes lit up as he warmed to the subject. It's what made humans the dominant species. On our planet, we don't give up, ever. A lion might be faster and stronger, but it can only sprint for short distances before it gets tired. A human can jog for hours, tracking that same lion until it collapses from exhaustion. He stood up and began pacing, his voice gaining intensity. We follow our prey across entire continents if we have to, through deserts, over mountains, across frozen wastelands. We adapt to any environment, eat almost anything, and we never ever stop coming. Shadow's form rippled with what might have been amusement. The Cytherians see humans as weak because you are small. They do not understand that size is not everything. Exactly, June said, snapping his fingers. They've been thinking like typical apex predators, all about individual strength and dominance. But the most successful predators on Earth hunt in packs, wolves, wild dogs, even some primates. They coordinate their attacks, support each other, share the kill. He gestured to the 3 dragons. You 3 have individual powers that would terrify any single opponent. Fire, ice, and shadow. Devastating on their own. But imagine what you could accomplish working together with a battle plan. Over the next several hours, June outlined his escape strategy. It was complex, requiring precise timing and absolute trust between all four of them. Pyros would use his fire to destroy key structural supports. Frost would create ice barriers to funnel guards into kill zones. Shadow would provide reconnaissance and eliminate sentries silently. And June would coordinate it all, using human tactics to turn their enemies' strengths against them. "There's something else," Frost said quietly as they finished reviewing the plan. "You speak of us as family, as packmates. We are not your species. We are not even from your world. Why do you include us in your tribe?" June paused, his hand resting on one of the crystal markers. For a moment, his tough exterior softened, revealing something vulnerable underneath. "I lost my unit back on Earth," he said quietly. "Good people who trusted me to lead them home. I failed them, and they died because of my mistakes. I've been running from that failure for 5 years, working alone, trusting no one." He looked up at the 3 massive creatures surrounding him. "But you 3, when you could have killed me on that first day, you chose not to. You could have taken the easy meal and pleased your captors. Instead, you listened. You treated me like a person, not prey." His voice grew stronger. "On Earth, we believe that the family you choose can be stronger than the one you're born into. Blood doesn't make you family. Loyalty does. Trust does. Shared purpose does." Shadow's dark eyes seemed to glow as he lowered his great head closer to June. "Then we are pack, little brother, and pack protects pack." "Pack hunts together," Frost added, her icy breath creating small crystals in the air around them. "Pyros," rumbled his agreement, the sound reverberating through the cavern like distant thunder. "Let us show these Catherians what happens when they cage the wrong predators." The bond between them wasn't sealed with ceremony or ritual. It was forged in shared determination and mutual respect. 4 beings from different worlds united by a common goal and growing trust. Above them, the Catherian observers grew increasingly nervous as their entertainment continued to behave in ways that defied all previous experience. For 3 weeks, June had memorized every detail of the prison's routine. He knew that the night shift change happened at exactly midnight, leaving a 6-minute window when the guard stations were understaffed. He knew which cameras had blind spots and which corridors the patrols avoided. Most importantly, he knew that the Catherians had grown overconfident after 3 centuries of easy victories. Tonight, that overconfidence would cost them everything. June crouched in the shadows near the largest crystal formation, his improvised weapons tucked into his belt. The dragons waited in their assigned positions, barely visible in the dim lighting. Above them, only 2 guards remained at the observation posts instead of the usual 6. "Remember," June whispered, his voice barely audible, "we stick to the plan, fast, coordinated, no hesitation. Everyone knows their role." 3 massive heads nodded in the darkness. June checked the crystal chronometer he'd been using to track time. 30 seconds until the shift change. He felt his heart rate slow, and his breathing steady, the same calm that had come over him before every mission in the old days. 10 seconds, he breathed. The observation deck lights dimmed as the day shift guards prepared to leave. Perfect. Now. Pyros rose from his hiding place like a golden mountain coming to life. His massive chest expanded, and he released a concentrated beam of superheated plasma that cut through the crystal restraint nodes like a blowtorch through paper. The energy bonds that had held the dragons captive for 3 centuries shattered in an instant, sending cascades of sparks throughout the cavern. The moment they were free, Frost spread her wings and exhaled a massive cloud of freezing air. The temperature in the cavern dropped 50 degrees in seconds, creating a localized blizzard that turned the air white with ice crystals and steam. The observation cameras immediately fogged over, leaving the guards blind. Shadow moved like liquid. Darkness, his form dispersing into tendrils of black mist that rose through the cavern toward the upper levels. Within moments, he had enveloped the guard stations in impenetrable darkness. June leaped onto Pyros's back, gripping the dragon's golden scales as they launched into the air. The sensation was incredible, like riding a living missile with perfect control and devastating firepower. "Level 6, East Corridor," June called out, his voice cutting through the chaos. 3 guards coming down the emergency stairs. Frost iced the floor beneath them. Frost banked left and released a stream of freezing air that instantly turned the metal flooring into a skating rink. The Cytherian guards, running at full speed in their panic, hit the ice and went down hard, their weapons scattering across the floor. "Shadow, take them while they're down," June commanded. Dark tendrils emerged from the walls and wrapped around the fallen guards, dragging them into the shadows. They disappeared without a sound. The alarm klaxons began wailing throughout the facility, their harsh sound echoing off the crystal walls. Emergency lights bathed everything in pulsing red, but it was too late. The dragons were already 3 levels up and moving fast. "Elevator shaft straight ahead," June shouted over the noise. "Pyros, melt the support cables. We don't want reinforcements." Coming down, a focused beam of plasma cut through the thick metal cables, like they were made of string. The elevator platform crashed down the shaft, taking out 2 levels of emergency staircases on its way down. More guards appeared at the level 4 checkpoint, their energy weapons already charging. But they were thinking like civilized beings, expecting a frontal assault. "Split formation," June called out. "Frost, come up from below. Shadow, take the ceiling. Pyros, we go straight through the middle." The dragons moved with deadly precision, their natural abilities amplified by human tactical thinking. The guards found themselves under attack from 3 directions at once: fire from the front, ice from below, and shadow from above. Their formation collapsed in seconds. "Communication center, next level up," June said, consulting the mental map he'd built over weeks of observation. "We cut their ability to call for help, then we take the armory." Level after level fell to their coordinated assault. The Cytherians had built their prison to contain individual prisoners, not a coordinated military unit. Their security systems were designed to stop escapees from running away, not to defend against attackers who fought like a trained special forces team. As they reached the upper levels, June felt something he hadn't experienced in years: the satisfaction of a perfectly executed battle plan. Every move had been calculated, every contingency planned for. The beast wasn't just loose, it was hunting. The stolen Cytherian transport ship drifted silently through the asteroid field, its engines powered down to avoid detection. Inside the cramped cargo hold, June spread out holographic star charts while the 3 dragons studied their next target. "Supply convoy Alpha 7, he said, pointing to a shipping route marked in blue. 12 cargo haulers carrying medical supplies and food rations to the outer colonies. Light escort, maybe 4 patrol ships." 3 weeks had passed since their escape from the prison moon, and they had already hit 6 Cytherian installations. Each strike was carefully planned and brutally executed, leaving no survivors to report exactly what had happened. "The convoy will pass through the nexus point in 18 hours, Pyros observed, his golden eyes reflecting the hologram's glow. "But that system has 3 patrol stations nearby." June smiled coldly. "That's exactly why they won't expect us. There. The Cytherians think like a military. They assume we'll avoid heavily defended areas. But that's thinking like prey." He zoomed in on the star chart, highlighting several points along the convoy route. "We don't attack where they're strong. We attack where they think they're safe. Hit fast, take what we need, and disappear before they can respond." Shadow's dark form rippled with interest. "You speak of taking supplies. We do not require their food or medicine." "No, but we need information," June replied. "Every ship we capture gives us access to their communication networks, their shipping schedules, their security protocols. Knowledge is a weapon, and right. Now we're learning everything about how they operate." The raid on the supply convoy went exactly as planned. The dragons attacked from 3 different angles, while June coordinated from the stolen transport. The escort ships, expecting to face pirates or rebels with conventional weapons, found themselves overwhelmed by creatures that could breathe fire, create ice storms, and move through space like living shadows. Within 20 minutes, the entire convoy was either destroyed or captured. June downloaded their computer systems, while the dragons eliminated any ships that tried to escape. "Another perfect operation," Frost said, as they regrouped in the asteroid field. "But I noticed something troubling in their communications." She projected a series of intercepted messages into the air, reports from across the Cytherian Empire, all describing the same mysterious attacks. "They're calling you the Beast of Terror," Shadow said, with what might have been amusement. "The human who commands dragons. Fear of you is spreading faster than news of our attacks." June read through the messages, his expression growing more satisfied with each report. Military bases going on high alert, trade routes being abandoned, entire sectors requesting additional security. "Look at this," he said, highlighting one particular message. "They're pulling patrol ships from the outer rim to guard the core systems. That means less protection for the mining stations and research facilities." Over the following weeks, their campaign intensified. They struck ore processing plants, destroying months of work in minutes. They hit communication relays, leaving entire sectors unable to coordinate their defenses. They captured supply ships and used them to infiltrate more secure facilities. But June's real genius wasn't in the attacks themselves. It was in how he used the Catherians' own responses against them. "They're behaving exactly as I predicted," he explained to the dragons. As they watched a massive Catherian battle fleet deploy to protect a mining station, they had no intention of attacking. "Every time we hit a target, they overreact. They send more ships, more guards, more resources to defend places we've already finished with." While leaving other targets vulnerable, Pyros realized. Exactly. They're fighting the last battle instead of the next one. Their reputation continued to grow. Catherian merchants refused to travel certain routes. Military commanders demanded impossible levels of protection for routine missions. Some outposts simply abandoned their positions rather than risk facing the Beast of Terror and his dragon pack. "They fear us," Frost observed, after monitoring another batch of intercepted communications. "Not just our power, but our unpredictability. They cannot understand how we think." "Because they've never faced humans before," June replied. "They're used to civilized warfare, honor duels, formal challenges, armies meeting in open battle. They don't know how to fight an enemy that strikes from shadows and disappears like smoke." He pulled up the tactical display showing Catherian fleet movements across the sector. Ships were being pulled from dozens of systems to guard a handful of high-value targets. "Look at this," he said with satisfaction. 6 months ago they controlled this entire region with minimal forces. Now they need 3 times as many ships just to maintain basic security. We're not just hurting them, we're making them afraid of their own shadows." Shadow's eyes gleamed in the darkness. "Fear is indeed a powerful weapon, Pack Brother, but what happens when they stop reacting to fear and start thinking clearly?" June's smile was sharp as a blade. "Then we remind them why they were afraid. In the first place." Admiral Keck stood on the bridge of the flagship Dominion, watching his fleet of 200 warships move into attack formation. The largest military force the Catherian Empire had assembled in decades, all to hunt down 1 escaped human and 3 dragons. It seemed like overkill, but the High Command had made their position clear. This Beast of Terror had become too dangerous to ignore. "Sir, we're approaching the target coordinates," reported the navigation officer, his forearms working across multiple control panels. "Long-range sensors show the asteroid field where intelligence believes they're hiding." Kex nodded, his silver skin gleaming under the bridge lights. "Begin search pattern Delta. I want every rock in this field scanned. They can't hide from 200 ships." What the Admiral didn't know was that June had been expecting this response for weeks. During his imprisonment, he had spent countless hours studying Catherian military doctrine, memorizing their tactical manuals and battle formations. He knew exactly how they would respond to his campaign of terror. Hidden among the asteroids, June checked his improvised communication equipment one final time. The dragons were positioned throughout the field, their massive forms disguised as space rocks using a combination of Shadow's darkness manipulation and carefully placed asteroid debris. "Everyone ready?" he whispered into his comm unit. "In position," came Pyros's rumbling voice. "Ready to hunt," Frost added, her tone cold as the space around them. "They approach like prey walking into a web," Shadow said with dark satisfaction. The Catherian fleet spread out across the asteroid field in a standard search formation, exactly what June had predicted. Their ships moved in neat, organized lines, scanning each rock methodically. It was efficient, professional, and completely predictable. "Admiral, we're detecting some unusual readings from Sector 7, the sensor operator called out. "The asteroids there seem to have higher metal content than expected." "Investigate," Kex ordered, "but maintain formation." Don't let them scatter our forces. That was exactly the mistake June had been waiting for. As the fleet tightened their search pattern, moving deeper into the asteroid field, they unknowingly positioned themselves perfectly for what was about to happen. June activated his stolen communication array and broadcast on all Kytherian military frequencies. His voice, calm and steady, echoed across 200 warships simultaneously. "Admiral Kex of the Dominion," he said, using information gathered from their intercepted communications. "You made one critical mistake in your planning. On the bridge of the flagship, every officer froze. How did this human know the Admiral's name? How was he accessing their secure channels? You assumed that humans fight like Kytherians," June continued. "Honor-bound, predictable, following the rules of civilized warfare. But you forgot something important about my species." The Admiral's mandibles clicked nervously. "All ships, locate the source of that transmission. Find him now." "We don't fight fair," June said, and gave the signal. The asteroids around the fleet suddenly came alive. What the Kytherians had mistaken for ordinary space rocks revealed themselves to be three massive dragons, perfectly camouflaged and positioned for maximum devastation. Pyros erupted from his hiding place like a golden star, going nova, his plasma breath cutting through the hull of the nearest command cruiser. The ship's shields, designed to stop energy weapons and projectiles, offered no protection against the raw fury of dragon fire. Frost emerged from below the fleet's formation, her ice breath creating a crystalline storm that froze entire ship sections. Solid before they shattered like glass in the vacuum of space, Shadow materialized everywhere at once, his dark form wrapping around ships like a living nightmare, crushing hulls and tearing through armor plating with claws that could rend metal, like paper. But the real genius of the attack wasn't the dragon's power, it was June's coordination. He had studied every ship class in the Kytherian fleet, identifying their weaknesses and blind spots. His voice crackled across the chaos, directing the dragons with surgical precision. "Pyros, command ship at bearing 270. Take out their communications array first. Frost, escort carriers on the port flank, disable their fighter bays. Shadow, those heavy cruisers are trying to form a defensive line. Break them." The fleet that had come to destroy them was being torn apart by tactics they couldn't understand or counter. Ships designed to fight other ships found themselves helpless against enemies that moved through space like living weapons. "All ships retreat," Admiral Kex finally ordered, watching his flagship's bridge fill with smoke from damaged systems. "Emergency jump now." But as the surviving ships prepared to flee, June's voice cut through their panic one final time. This wasn't a threat or a boast. It was a promise that made every Kytherian's blood run cold. "Tell your empire what you learned here today," he said quietly. "Earth remembers its children, and we're coming home." Of the 200 ships that had entered the asteroid field, fewer than 50 escaped to carry that message back to Kytherian space. 6 months after the disaster at the asteroid field, the Kytherian Empire was in chaos. Trade routes had collapsed, military resources were stretched thin, and fear of the Beast of Terror had spread to every corner of their territory. The High Council met in emergency session daily, trying to find a solution to a problem they barely understood. That's when June's message arrived. It came through every communication channel simultaneously: military frequencies, civilian networks, even emergency broadcasts. The transmission was simple and direct. "I request an audience with your High Council. I will arrive at your capital in 3 days. Do not attempt to stop me." The Council's first instinct was to mobilize every defense they had. The capital world of Kytheros was the most heavily fortified planet in their empire, protected by orbital weapons platforms, energy shields, and a fleet of 500 warships. But then the reports started coming in from the outer systems. Every military installation between Kytheros and the Rim had been systematically destroyed over the past week. Not damaged, completely obliterated. The message was clear. Resistance was pointless. When June's stolen transport ship entered the Kytheros system, it wasn't alone. 3 massive shapes flanked it, the dragons moving through space like living weapons of war. The planetary defense fleet formed up to intercept, but at the last moment, orders came from the High Council itself. Let them pass. The transport landed in the capital city's central plaza, touching down on polished stone that had never before felt the weight of enemy ships. June stepped out calmly, wearing simple clothes and carrying no visible weapons. Above him, the three dragons circled the city like ancient gods of war, their massive forms casting shadows over buildings that had stood for 1,000 years. Citizens fled the streets, but not because they were ordered to. The sight of the beast of terror walking peacefully through their capital, while dragons commanded their skies, triggered something primal, the recognition that they were in the presence of apex predators who had chosen for the moment to show mercy. The council chambers were a marvel of Cytherian architecture, crystal walls that soared hundreds of feet high, with a domed ceiling that offered a perfect view of the sky above. Usually it was designed to make visitors feel small and insignificant. Today, with dragons visible through the transparent dome, it had the opposite effect. The 12 members of the High Council sat in their ceremonial robes, their silver skin pale with fear despite their attempts to maintain dignity. At their center, Supreme Chancellor Vox tried to project authority as June approached the speaking platform. "You dare enter our sacred chambers," Vox began, his voice amplified by the room's acoustics. "You are a criminal, a terrorist who has—" "I'm a soldier," June interrupted quietly, his calm voice somehow carrying more weight than the Chancellor's bluster. "And I'm here to deliver a message from Earth." He looked up at the dome, where Pyros was visible circling overhead, his golden scales gleaming in the sunlight. "6 months ago you threw me in a cage with 3 dragons, expecting to watch me die for your entertainment. You made several mistakes that day." June turned back to face the council, his expression serious but not threatening. "First, you assumed that size equals strength. Second, you thought fear was the only tool you needed to control others. But your biggest mistake was thinking that humans are prey." Chancellor Vox's mandibles clicked nervously. What do you want?" "Nothing," June replied. "I'm not here to negotiate or make demands. I'm here to educate you about the species you tried to enslave." He gestured toward the dome again, where all 3 dragons were now visible. "You've spent 3 centuries keeping these magnificent beings as prisoners, using them as executioners. But they're not monsters, they're people. Ancient, wise, honorable people who deserved your respect, not your cruelty." "And humans?" another council member asked hesitantly. June's smile was small, but unmistakably predatory. "Humans are persistence hunters, Counselor. We evolved on a world full of creatures bigger, stronger, and faster than us. We survived by being smarter, more adaptable, and more cooperative. We form bonds that transcend species and remember every kindness and every cruelty." At that moment, the sky above the capital filled with new shapes. Dozens of ships dropped out of hyperspace, sleek, powerful vessels bearing the insignia of Earth's defense force. The rescue fleet that had been searching for their lost citizen had finally arrived. "We don't just survive," June continued, watching the council members' faces as they realized the implications. "We adapt. We bond with others who share our values. We remember those who wrong us, and we never, ever abandon our own." He stepped back from the speaking platform, his message delivered. "The dragons are free now. They'll decide for themselves where to go and what to do. As for me, I'm going home." Supreme Chancellor Vox found his voice one last time. What should we tell our people about this?" June paused at the chamber's entrance, looking back at the terrified council members. "Tell them the truth. Tell them that the universe is bigger and more dangerous than they imagined. Tell them that there are species out there who judge others by their actions, not their size." He walked toward the exit, then stopped. "And tell them that Earth remembers everything." As June left the chambers and walked back toward his ship, the legend that had started in a crystal cave beneath a prison moon reached its final chapter. Across the galaxy the story spread, of the human who befriended dragons, who turned predators into packmates, and who reminded an arrogant empire that the most dangerous beast in any room is often the smallest one. The dragons had found their freedom, the human had found his purpose, and the universe had learned a lesson it would never forget.